Hi everyone, my name is Reuben Kigame, and in this particular episode, I would like to respond to a question that many people have been asking, and that is, what else is Reuben Kigame? And indeed, there are many, many aspects that I could talk about. I could talk about my time as a teacher, having graduated from Kenyatta University with a Bachelor of Education and having taught at Mary Hill High School. I could talk about that. By the way, it was fun. I could also talk about my years in broadcasting and running a radio station and just so many wonderful experiences behind the microphone. Some wonderful time at Family FM, that is part of Family Media. And I remember my stint at Biblia Husema Broadcasting when they were starting, and my contribution towards the setup. I remember also a very short stint, a voluntary stint at Kameme FM on Sunday afternoons, yeah. And then I was part of the group that helped to set up Hope FM in terms of ideas and programming in particular. And those were very interesting years, all the way to my years at Fish FM, a station I dreamed from scratch and ran for 9 years before shutting down in 2016. Very, very wonderful time with most of the people now that are in the media, very well trained. A lot of the people that I trained and worked with are now in stations like Hope FM, Biblia Husema Broadcasting, of course. There's one gentleman at Radio Maisha, part of the Standard Group. And I've had quite an eventful career in that, with a full-fledged Master of Science in journalism and media studies. Very, very wonderful experience at Moi University. And wow, what can I say? But today, I would like to highlight an aspect that many people get shocked when they recognize I'm involved in. And for that reason, a lot of people in the church think now I'm losing my mind or losing my focus. Some have even said I've backslidden, or I've become very secular or pagan, And a lot of people who know me as a musician get shocked when I write on my blog about political issues. I write on social issues, and on Facebook when I speak my mind on certain things about the nation, Africa, the world, and so on. A lot of people get shocked, by the way. And recently, when I have put out videos on my YouTube channel talking about the nation and what's going on, or written some tweets on my account on Twitter, a lot of people are shocked, like, Reuben, what's wrong with you? Where are you coming from? Why all of a sudden are you going into politics and social and economic issues? What's all this? Just stick to your music and so on. So the reason why I am excited to talk about this aspect is because I would like to clarify that I have been a social activist and revolutionary for a very long time, and especially from my student days. And I'll be sharing with you a little bit about that. So let me tell you a little bit about my social activism and revolutionary thinking. I'm a Christian, yes, I'm born again. I love Jesus like crazy. I go to church. I like to worship. But I'm also someone who deals a lot with ideas. And ideology is something that really engages me, and I engage it to a great extent. From my student days, I've been quite involved. And going back to my time at Kenyatta University, I think I was about 21 then, it was almost illegal for any student or any Kenyan to speak against the KANU government and Moi's regime at large, because everything was so centralized, and if you had a different opinion, you would be deemed to be Marxist, a member of some clandestine group, and at that time there was a common group known as Mwakenya, that the clandestine group that was feared to be plotting to overthrow the government and so on. And all these fears crop out of the 1982 attempted coup that backfired, and so Moi's government became very, very repressive, and sort of just cracked down on anyone and anything that tended to be a little contrary to government. However, because of all the injustices and so many people that were jailed, detained without trial and so on, a couple of them, of course, were assassinated. There was so much tension, there was so much fear. And in the midst of that fear, you still had some very wonderful and, brave voices that were our role models and heroes as university students. I'm talking about people like the late Alexander Muge, who was very vocal. I'm talking about the, people like Henry Okulu, who wrote a lot about church and politics. I'm talking about someone like Bishop Ndingi Mwana Nzeki, that were very vocal in telling the government, the way of God, which was the way of justice, and the way of tolerance for other people's opinions and so on. So I was very much part of that student movement that followed these wonderful citizens of Kenya. Now, I do not know how many of you would remember two publications that were regular at that time and sort of began to tease the government's patience. There was the Weekly Review by Hilary Ngweno, and then there was one that I really loved that came from the church circles, the one called Beyond, that was put out by Bidan Bugwa. And as a student, if you were found with any of those publications, you would be in big trouble, big trouble. And what would happen is you could be detained, of course, as someone belonging to some kind of clandestine group. And so, of course, now I can say it. I had tons and tons of Weekly Review, and even more tons upon tons of Beyond magazine. Anything Beyond put out, I got. I had a few other external magazines, but those were dominant because they seemed to speak my mind. And, I related to what they were publishing. But because it was dangerous to be seen with those magazines, what I did was, I would hide them in clothes and then put them in my wardrobe. And so I had tons and tons of books in my wardrobe, just so that, I would not be found out. But I ferociously devoured those magazines. And what I am today is partly that. Of course, because maybe of my visual handicap and not having been so vocal, or because of my music reaching you before my activism. A lot of people think, Kigame is just, tunaomba uwepo wako uende nasi. And I love to worship, yes. But I'm a social activist at heart, interested in matters of justice and equality and peace and real unity, against corruption. And I remember when I would hear someone like Honorable Raila Odinga, and Shikuku and so on were being harassed and some detained and so on, it would bother me. Of course, it would bother me because as a university student, ideological freedom, the freedom to be able to exchange ideas, was very close to my heart. Of course, when I looked at the independence rhetoric in Africa and the prospects of new, stronger, free nations, and, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere down south in Tanzania talking about African socialism and, education for self-reliance and all of that, I was really baptized into Pan-Africanism. Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, all these wonderful people that brought Africa to where it was something I was very, very interested in. And so, as a person, I have been quite vocal from those days. So a lot of you may actually not know this, but I was at the first multi-party rally. And, I remember Shikuku, I remember Matiba, I remember Rubia, all those guys, speaking out of pain, of course, but speaking hope. And, the repealing of Section 2A of the Constitution, the then Constitution, really spoke peace to me. It spoke hope. It was like a breath of fresh air. And so I have always been involved. I am among the first Kenyans that voted for, Mwai Kibaki, because, I looked at Mwai Kibaki and I thought, wow, if we could have an intelligent economist like Bwana Kibaki to take over the reins of this country's rule, then we would have something really visionary, in the line of the Singapores and so on. And so I had so much hope. So when I first got my voter's card, of course, I voted for Kibaki, and subsequently after that, except in 2007, when I was so fed up with how, the scandals were taking the order of day. And so I voted on the other side of ODM. And in other words, I have always been on the activism side. Now, of course, a lot of you know my music alongside the worship music and so on. But like I charge many times, I think one of the greatest disservices that Kenyans have, pushed towards me is not paying attention to the lyrics that I write. That has sort of saddened me. So people consume my music piecemeal. They sort of just scratch the surface or just hear a tune they like. Most of the people don't even know the words to my songs. The tune sounds nice. Oh yeah, it's a nice prayer song. The students will probably sing it before they go to exams because of fearing failure or whatever. I don't know. But I complain. Maybe it's a polite complaint that people have not listened to what I say in my songs. I have a whole album, for example, called Raw Emotions. I don't think people are paying attention to that. So I thought I wanted to take a brief moment and sort of take you down memory lane. And some of these songs you may have ignored because you don't listen to them, you bypass them even on the channel. You rush for the ones that have a lot of views. But there's a lot that I've been saying ever since my student days that I wish you would listen to. I really wish you would. I wish we paid attention to lyrics, what people say in their songs. And I just wanted to sort of illustrate for you that I've been speaking a lot, but you've not been listening. And I'll go back to my very, very first album. And when I redid the recording, I actually left out this song because at that point, I feared I was being followed. So I removed that particular song from the first recording. The song was written in 1986 when I was in Form 6 going into that gap between going from Form 6 into the university. So 2021, thereabout. The song's called Give Them Freedom. It was among my first songs to ever write. And it was about the system of apartheid in South Africa, and how the suffering down there was mainly because of a few people who thought they were superior to the dark-skinned populations of Africa. Down the streets you see the blood, the sign of genocide. Petrol bombs and one shot dead, there's pain on every side. Children crying, men in prison, seeking to be free, while the stubborn hearts of a few white men will refuse just to agree. Give them freedom, give them freedom, give them freedom, give them freedom. They need freedom, they need freedom. Oh, give them freedom, give them freedom. We pray freedom, Lord, give them freedom. So the song was actually set as a protest song against the apartheid system in South Africa, and how a few people, grab onto the reins of power and jail the residents of South Africa, and then drive them through one of the most hostile inhumanities that anyone could inflict on somebody. This bothered me. And if it doesn't bother you, if it has never bothered you, maybe you'll never understand. Maybe you'll never actually understand why I'm an activist today. Because it is just wrong. It is inhuman. It's ungodly, actually. And fast forwarding a little bit to, my time at Maryhill High School, when I was teaching, I wrote a lot of activism songs. And my students, I'm sure some that are watching today can attest to the fact that I wrote a lot of songs during my teaching days, and partly as a history teacher, of course, the events of the world, what was happening in Bosnia and Herzegovina, what was happening in Rwanda and Burundi, the things that were happening in Sudan and Somalia, just troubled me. The fall of Somalia was one of those things that really bothered me. Siad Barre, one man, so to speak, brings down Somalia to the point whereby he himself can't even stay. He flees. And the fall of Somalia is probably one of those things that really saddened me. And to this day, I still pray for the peace of Somalia and the restoration of Somalia. I have shed tears just thinking about how innocent people can be brought so low because of a few. And so my students might remember this song. It's called "Who Will Help the Refugees?" Born in a land that is aching from the pain of civil war, children pick up mines to play with, and down the streets they go. Papa shoots himself in horror, and mama dies of broken heart. Who will help the refugees? Who will help the refugees? Who will take some time to pray for peace? Who will give his life away, or give a place for them to stay? Who will help the refugees? Give some food and don't let them to freeze. Who will help the refugees? Sailing to safety, a mother gives birth to a baby boy. There is no doctor or midwife to help her, she bleeds and dies. There's anguish, grief, and lack of joy, as millions starve and questions why. Who will help the refugees? Out in a country that's hostile to the plight of the refugees. They kill a man for being a foreigner from a different race. In camps they wait for hope tomorrow, in the midst of misery and disease. Who will help the refugees? Who will help the refugees? Who will take some time to pray for peace? Who will give his life away or give a place for them to stay? Who will help the refugees? Give some food and don't let them to freeze. Who will help the refugees? So this I wrote especially after the collapse of Somalia and the pain that came upon so many that were fleeing. That second verse really was about a media report about those who are escaping from the war and the dismemberment of Somalia. And imagine a mother giving birth on a boat that is so overcrowded and so on. It was too much for me. And it just came through the music. I remember asking UNHCR at that point to very kindly help me record, because I couldn't at that point really afford releasing a whole album. So I made a request first when I first wrote the song for them to help me release this song. Unfortunately, it was not in their budget or something happened. I remember the communication. So when I got a chance to record and put it on my album, it's called Another Country, I was delighted. But sadly, a lot of people have never heard this song. Of course, it has not made it into the media much. But it's been here since I released the album in 1994. And on that same album, there are, many, many other songs. Recently, I released that on video, a song I wrote back in 1991, 92, I forget which. It's called When I Wake Up, When I wake up and listen to the news on the radio, I can't cheer up when I hear of the starving millions. I can't find peace when the world is full of misery. When will they cease seeing life as a luxury? So all this I was just crying out, and not from a hopeless point of view, because even though in verse 2 I talk about the newspaper reports and so on, when I turn to the papers, I see pictures of violence everywhere. Courts release lawbreakers. There is injustice everywhere. A father rapes his daughter, and a mother kills her son. The banks collapse with all their future, bringing tears to everyone. Yeah, and then I turn to the conclusion, and when I turn to the Bible, I read that these things will pass away. When I ask, and what about the troubles? Says God's gonna wipe them all away. So all this sort of consummated in the reign of the Messiah and all that on this earth, which I personally really look up to. And I don't know how many of you even remember this or even know the song. I guess I need no eyes to see the pain that fills the world around me now. You know, all that basically to protest against the status quo, and sometimes it's down to a bit of humor and caricature and sort of singing about what everybody else is aware of, you know. So this one I wrote about the matatu madness in Kenya. You leave home in the morning, it's time to go to work. You wish to board a taxi, but you do not have a cent. Your neighbor lends you bus fare, hoping soon you'll pay it back. And so you board a minibus, and it's time for hell to break loose again. They pack you like sardines, and they will squeeze you to the seat. Another man picks your pocket and takes your bus ticket home. They shout at you and call you names you wish you didn't board. But the angry boss will never understand. As the driver takes the corner, there's a pothole on the road. So he swerves and hits a cyclist who is pedaling against the time. No one keeps the traffic rules, no one seems to understand that any time someone could die from the madness and the selfishness we see. And so they pack you like sardines, they will squeeze you to the seat. Another man picks your pocket and takes your bus ticket home. They shout at you and call you names you wish you didn't board. But the angry boss will never understand. And then you go, yay, you know, all of that, you know, fun time. But the whole thing is that I am basically singing about the need for the matatu industry to reform. Yeah, so it comes through music. A lot of the music, of course, that most of you will not relate to. Maybe you don't even know about another video that I have on my channel. It's called Cry the Pain. It goes, cry the pain across the hill for a city that is burning. Cry the pain and then be still and help the people mourning. Did they have to build a bomb to tell the hatred story? And did we have to dig a tomb to quell the mystery? It's about the 1998 bombings in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. Cry the pain and join the song for the city in the sun. Cry the pain, but then be strong. God's justice will be done. So you have songs like that, and maybe because of some of the idioms that I use, people maybe don't relate to, but a lot of those who read current affairs and so on will be able to understand what I'm talking about. So for example, in that song, when I say, cry the pain for the haven of peace, I'm talking about Dar es Salaam, haven of peace, for the mother, father, and child, you know? So when I say cry the pain and join the song for the city in the sun, I'm talking about Nairobi. And then haven of peace, I'm talking about Dar es Salaam. So may sound a little cryptic, but I mean, we all go to school, so I always expect that somebody will pick up what I'm saying. And when you don't, sort of find out what is he talking about. So I can go on into a song about Eldoret, land of the happy and free. Eldoret, land of the runners of fame. But then I have, but what if Jesus would visit today? Eldoret, would you be ready for him? So all these songs that a lot of you don't know really depicts the real me, you know. Yes, I sing all these other songs and I teach and I broadcast and so on, but I'm really an activist at heart. And I feel very strongly about social ills and things that go wrong in society. And so I have a lot of fun songs too, you know, about life and you know, just what thrills me. There is a song called Simple Man. I'm a simple man with no big history and all that. And so there is a part of that song that says, I love my wife and I love my kids. I love the farmer who brings me milk. I love the guavas, yes, and I love the corn, the smell of dung and the smell of hay. That is me. So all of these sort of coalesce in me. I mean, I like to have fun too. But the point I wanted you to see is that I've been a social activist for the longest time. And when I write or tweet or make these videos, it is me. I'm very passionate about it. It's part of me. And I honestly long to see a new Kenya, a new Africa, a new world that is better than the world we have messed up. You know, God gave us a mandate. God gave us a beautiful world, but we have messed it up. And we are our own enemies, especially as Africans. We are our own enemies. God gave us wonderful countries and yes, we got our freedom, but looking at how our leaders lead, I sometimes think they're worse than the colonial masters. You know, it's one thing for somebody from far away to colonize you and oppress you and divide you and exploit you and jail you and kill you. But it's another when one of your brothers, one of your sisters, one of your own reduces you to less than a human being. It is horrible. It is horrible. And so a lot of my inspiration has been from reading, of course, history books and philosophy books and books on political science and so on. But I must also say, listening to, you know, the music of other Pan-Africanists and people who have, you know, changed the world through their music has really, you know, been part of my journey. Oh, pirates, yes, they rob I. You know about that. But the part of that song that really thrills me is, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Yeah, so that is a truth that is not just a song. That is what Africa needs. Or go back to, you know, the Congolese bands that were asking why some Bibles have pictures of Jesus painted as white and so on. And you can trace it in the music of Ae nakomitunaka, Ae nakomitunaka. If you look at the lyrics of that song, you will recognize that Africans have been asking these questions for the longest time. Why is it that the devil is painted as black? those from Congo will relate to this particular song. And, the famous one, Africa, oh Africa, oh liberté. So you look at all that. This is the music that has made me who I am, that makes me write what I write, that makes me, interested in social justice and equality and so on. There is a Catholic priest, of course, that has really influenced me a great deal musically. He's called Garth Hewitt. He's still alive and writing a lot on the liberation of different parts of the world. His music, I grew up listening to his music, and in my college days, I consumed a lot of it. He's the one who penned that song I was quoting in one of my videos. Nero's watching video while Rome begins to burn. Nero's wearing roller skates so he can quickly turn. Get away from what he doesn't want to see or want to hear. Nero's wearing headphones and they stretch from ear to ear. Nero's got a private world for which the heart may yearn. And Nero's watching video while Rome begins to burn. The callousness of the heart of man. I'm telling you, those songs, those are good songs. These are songs the media needs to play some more. And of course, the hard truth. How hard for the rich man to enter the kingdom. How hard it is to survive. Yeah, all these songs and how they killed, activists in Kampala and in South America and in Asia. All these things. And actually there is a book by Garth Hewitt. I think it bears that title. It's called Nero's Watching Video. And the callousness, I just can't stand. So this is me. That is Reuben, the social activist. And some people would maybe call me a political activist, whatever. I just want to see justice and equality for all. That's why I ran for office to become the first governor of Vihiga County in 2013. I lost honorably, but making it to the ballot, of course, for someone like me was a big deal. And you can actually see how the media really ignored my bid. But I want to close by showing you where exactly I draw my inspiration. It's because for me as a Christian, I believe that the gospel is holistic. The gospel, involves the freedom of the heart, the soul, the mind, and the body, but also the social order and the environment. That is how I see the gospel. And it's not my idea. I want to show you very quickly what Isaiah wrote in chapter 61. And you'll be amazed, because this is where I derive my energy and mandate to do what I do as a Christian. This is what Isaiah writes. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. Wow. That for me is the gospel. And in case you are doubting, when Jesus was called to read something in the synagogue, in the book of Luke, chapter 4, it is recorded that Jesus goes back to this particular passage. So I actually follow in the footsteps of Jesus in this particular definition of the gospel. Reading from Luke chapter 4, from verse 14, it says, Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news about him spread through the whole countryside. He taught in their synagogues, and everyone praised him. He went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. And he stood up to read. The scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Look at this. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." For me, that is the gospel. For me, that is social activism, because the gospel is holistic. That is why I do the things I do. That is why I write the songs I write. That is why I write the blogs I write. That is why I tweet the way I do. I hope it gives you a bit of an idea into my social activism world. Until another time, thank you so much. God bless you.